Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 114, Urban Deer Hunting Tactics, with special guest Dan Spencer, Des Moines, Iowa. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey, this is David Marsh with Marsh's Outdoors Ventures from Columbus, Ohio, and you're getting ready to hear another awesome tale from the Big Buck Registry. So keep it locked right here, guys.
Hi, this is Jen O'Hara.
And this is Narissa Harmon with Girls with Guns Clothing and Universal Huntress TV.
Get ready to gear up for another amazing podcast with Jay and Dusty on the Big Buck Registry, Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, this is Tim Salerno with Salerno Brothers. Hi, this is Randy Salerno with Salerno Brothers. Get ready to listen to another great episode of the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Welcome to the show. This is Jay Scott, your host of the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast. And guess what? I've got a co-host sitting right here with me. What's up, Dusty?
Man, it's another day closer to whitetail season.
Yes, sir, it is. Yes, sir, it is. Have you ever hunted in a spot where you could actually see your car?
Oh, absolutely. That's probably that's probably one of my favorite ways to hunt. I don't know why. Like, you know, I've talked to people like, man, they walk like way back in. And I'm not saying it's not good. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. But I swear to you, it seems like the closer to my vehicle I am, the more successful I am. I don't know why that is. I think it's just Ohio.
It always seems to me like even when I've gone out in the middle of, left the vehicle in the morning and didn't even get close to it until well after dark, after hiking around 10 miles and coming back, seems like all the deer ran right by my truck anyway. So why did I hoof it 10 miles in? So I'll end up back there anyway. Right.
Well, the thing is, I got a friend of mine who tells a story. They was down in Southern Ohio. They hunted really hard. They walked way back in, like 2 miles.
Yeah.
And they hunted all day. And like lunchtime, the second day, they decided to come out to eat their sandwich and just change it up a little bit, take a little break. And this is no kidding. They were standing there at the truck eating a sandwich on the tailgate. And like they looked up the road, and here comes one of the biggest bucks both of them has ever seen on hoof, right across the gravel road in front of them. And of course, your shotgun's sitting over on the tire beside the truck, so you don't have time to get the shotgun and try to make something happen. Right. All they could do was sit there and eat their sandwich and watch this monster buck just walk right across the road and ease down through the woods. Yep. I don't know. I feel that for me is walking way back in, you're disturbing more than you're actually it's worth. That's my whole thinking on that. And I could be completely wrong. But I feel that the deer watch you walk in if you go way back in. They know your pattern. They see you. No matter how stealthy you try to be, a deer is still going to know that you're walking in.
Yeah.
And 9% of the time, I walked right by some nice deer. And the reason I know I walked by some nice deer, I watched them stand up on the hillside that I walked in on.
Right.
I'm like, are you kidding me? I walked right by that buck on the way in here.
Right.
I could see the buck from the tree stand.
Right.
He got up and just slid over the other side of the hill. He knew I was there.
Right.
So now my theory is not to go too far. Whether it's a great one or not, years of trial and error, I feel that it's a great decision not to go all the way back to the back of the property.
Yeah.
Just because you seem like you disturb more than it's worth. And that's just personal opinion and a few years of hunting trial and errors.
Yeah.
If I walk clear the back and hunt, the deer don't come out in the field where they normally do. But if I stay up closer to the road, the deer actually come out comfortably. They walk out in the field. They come work their way up towards the road, and you usually get a shot. But that's just going off my theories of my areas.
Well, I think there's something to be said for that. I mean, we know for sure that the whitetail's biggest defense mechanism is its nose. It can smell.
Right, absolutely.
But I think a very, very close second to that is a whitetail's ability to just not move. Period.
Right.
stillness, just absolute stillness.
And, it seems like if you walk clear to the back of a farm, there's got to be deer between your starting point and the back.
Got to be.
So therefore, you bump a few. And that sound you hear that freaks you out when you're walking in the dark of something crashing through the woods?
That's right.
That's not a squirrel.
No.
That's usually a couple of whitetails that you've bumped out of their bed, and they're now awake and aware, and they're knowing that you're there.
Yep.
You bumped them out of their bed. They're on the move.
That's right.
So then, just I don't know. Trial and error told me to stay out close to the road, not disturb the back of the farm. But then, that's my personal opinion. Right. Other people go clear the back and they harvest the monster. But my theory is stay out of where you normally see them. Let them come out comfortably. Let them work their way towards you, and you're going to get that shot if you wait it out.
Right. So let's say that you don't live in the country,
right?
But you live in an urban area where deer live.
Right.
You still want to hunt them. And
absolutely.
What do you do? Well, we decided to turn to Dan Spencer, who's a urban deer hunter in Des Moines, Iowa, where there are lots of big deer running around. And we thought we'd explore the tactics around urban deer hunting. And I don't think that happens everywhere, but certainly in Des Moines, Iowa, it does. And it's a whole different bag of tricks that you got to bring with you to lay down the big one. So Dan reached out to us by email quite a few months ago. He's a fan of the podcast. He goes, "Hey, I got a really good topic for you." I said, "Yes, you do. That's a fantastic topic."
Yeah, urban deer hunting is something that we haven't touched base on, Jay.
Yeah, it's been a little while. A couple years ago we did with Rob Lucas, but this is a little different than that. Rob was hunting in Connecticut. This is Des Moines, where you actually hunt, the parks where the people jog and hang out, and there are deer there too, and they have to be population controlled. And this is how you do it.
It's going to be great for me because I'm getting into this.
And once again, with the urban hunting, and you would enjoy this, Dusty, because 9 times out of 10, you can see your vehicle from where you're hunting if you're in an urban setting.
Is that good or bad? I don't know, but I don't know. It's a thing that I'm not scared to do. I can see my truck. I'm not scared of that.
But it's still hunting. They still have to be hunted, and it's just a different aspect to hunting that I don't know if we ever think about it too much. But I thought it would be interesting to get off the beaten trail, even though it's on the beaten trail more than anything.
Right, absolutely. Let's get him on the phone.
All right, let's get Dan Spencer. Dan Spencer, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, sir?
I am well. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm psyched, man. You sent that email to me a while ago, actually, now, and you said, "Hey, I got a great topic for you. I want to talk to you about urban deer hunting." And it's something we haven't talked about in quite a while. Last time we talked to Rob Lucas from Chasing Tail, and that was over 2 years ago, as my calendar reminds me, and it seems like it was yesterday, but it was quite a while ago. So I thought we should do this again, and I took you up on your offer. And the one of the things that you had, it kind of struck a nerve, is that you talked about proficiency testing in qualifying to hunt in urban settings. I thought that was interesting. I want to touch on that in a little bit. But first, I'd like to hear about you. Where are you from, Dan?
I reside in Des Moines, Iowa.
Excellent. And what's happening in Des Moines? Did you grow up there?
I grew up very close to Des Moines, a suburb of Des Moines called Waukee.
Okay.
And moved away a little farther away, still in Iowa, but then moved back to Des Moines after I got remarried. And so I've been in Des Moines for, I guess, about 9 years now.
Gotcha. And there are a lot of deer in Iowa, as I hear.
There's a couple. Yeah, we got some pretty nice ones, too.
One or two, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So when did you start deer hunting? How old were you?
Well, I was trying to think about this earlier. I think I was 18 when I got my first bow, and I shotgun hunted and bow hunted that year. And so from then on, I pretty much got into it myself. My father didn't hunt, so I just kind of self-taught. So I've been at it almost 30 years. 30 years. And time just flies by, doesn't it? Yes, it does. I was thinking about that, and now I feel old.
Right. That's it's amazing how time flies when you just start thinking about all the things you've done.
Oh yeah. And
all the deer hunts you've been on, and you tend not to forget a single one.
Right.
So who was your influence deer hunting? It sounds like you didn't have family members doing that. What kind of turned you onto it?
Well, my grandfather, he hunted. he never took me hunting. And then when he passed away, all of us grandkids had a chance to get one of his guns. So I got an old 16 gauge single shot, which I would not recommend anyone shooting unless they like pain, because it'll make your hand bleed and make your shoulder really hurt. Yeah. So I got that gun, and I started hunting with that gun, and I got really good with that gun. And a single shot's the way to start, I believe. But and my brother got a 22 and a shotgun, so we just kind of started that way. And I kept up with it. My brother doesn't hunt anymore. And so, yeah, I just kind of self-taught. I hooked up with a friend or two, and we just kind of went and did the deal.
And that was it. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Tell me about the landscape and the topography where you live. What's it like?
Just a lot of woods, a lot of fields, a lot of corn, soybeans, river bottom, rolling hills. It's flatter outside of town, but and where I live here in Des Moines, it's rolling hills. And I live real close to a public lake, and that's where I hunt a lot, is around that lake in the park.
Okay.
But, yeah, rolling hills, lots of woods and lots of fields.
Okay. So, touching on the subject of urban hunting. Mm-hmm. Now, you live in an area that is populated enough to be considered urban, correct?
Correct.
All right. So, with that comes some greater responsibility.
Yes.
Because there are more people around. And
right.
The state sees it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you have to be more careful, but being more careful means you have to pass some tests to prove to them that you're safe enough to be
Correct.
Placed in their public woods, right?
Correct.
So tell me about that. How did you learn about this, and what's different about that than just the guy that wants to go hunting in the woods in the middle of nowhere?
Well, I'll tell you, Jay, it's a lot of work to start, at least here where I hunt. It was not just, it's not easy to do. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. The first hoop you have to jump through, you have to take the bow hunter safety course. It's International Bow Hunter Education Foundation has that. And you have to take that and pass it, and take a bow hunter safety class and pass that. So that's your first step. And that's a one-time deal. You don't have to ever do that again.
Okay.
But then the yearly test is the proficiency test we're talking about, and you have to take that every year. And what you have to do with that, there's a certified places you go to do that. There's only 2 in Des Moines.
Okay.
And you have a certified instructor watch you take the test, and basically you shoot 10 arrows at 15 yards.
Okay.
And 10 arrows at 20 yards, and have to hit 80% within probably a 12-inch circle.
Okay.
And it doesn't seem that difficult to me, but
no.
I have seen people not pass it.
Okay.
And I've not passed it myself with my recurve.
Gotcha.
I just get real nervous in tests, and lots of people standing around watching, and so I failed myself. But I've seen people with compounds not pass either.
Right.
You have 2 chances each year to pass. If you don't pass your first chance, you can come back another time, the next day, next week, whenever, and try again. There's no practice shots. You come in cold, just like a hunting situation, and shoot cold. And so yeah, it doesn't sound difficult, and it's not really, but unless you don't take tests well.
Right. Now, Dusty, this is a little bit like what you just went through.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. You know, I was going to ask you, how many arrows did you? Was there so many in, so many off? Explain how they scored that.
Actually, I've heard two different scenarios. The actual rules themselves say 10 at 15, 10 at 20, 80% within the kill zone, the 12-inch circle. Some people say that means 80% out of all 20 arrows. So if you got all 10 in at 15 and 8 in at 20, you'd be good, or 6 in at 20, you'd be good. Some people say it's 80% of each. So 8 out of 10 at 15, 8 out of 10 at 20.
Gotcha.
And so yeah, 8 out of 10. That's the way that this other place in town does it, is 8 out of 10 at 15, 8 out of 10 at 20.
Gotcha. Now, who is it that's conducting the test? Is it somebody sent by the state, or an instructor that had to qualify themselves?
We have 2 shooting ranges in town, and we just had one there for a while. And the owner who passed away that had the first shooting range, he was one that set up the proficiency test and started the whole urban hunt thing. And so he was a qualified bow hunter, safety, and instructor. So he would just watch you shoot. Mm-hmm. So it's not like a state appointed person. It's the person that owns or works at the archery range.
Okay. So where does the whole requirement come from then? If it's not a state thing, is it a city limit thing? Is it a city thing?
Well, it is a state thing. The Congress, the Iowa State Congress,
Yep.
They do all the rules for all the hunts. So it did come from them, but it's not a state appointed, I guess, person that watches you.
Okay.
It's just somebody that's qualified that runs the archery range.
Okay, gotcha. So what makes it an urban hunt? What is the definition of an urban hunt to you?
Well, an urban hunt here is, like I said, we hunt a lot of parks in the city limits. I guess an urban hunt would be the city limits.
Okay.
The outskirts of the city, of course, you may not have very many people, and you can get permission on private ground that's in the city limits, but it's outside the city. I've never attempted to do that yet. I have a friend of mine that does that. So you're not actually around a lot of people, a lot of houses, people walking through trails through the park and the private ground. But so there is that opportunity also. But I guess just anything in the city limits where you could have a chance of running into a person or a person seeing you, or where deer are a nuisance to the community. Via car accidents or eating your exotic plants or your garden, that type of thing.
So, I mean, are we talking about like city parks, like where you'd find more concrete than trees kind of thing? Or is it a little more spread out, like I would envision Iowa to be, with lots of cornfields and soy fields and things like that?
Yeah, it's most of the parks. The one I have the most is one of the smaller ones, but of course, there's driving roads going through it, and there is some new cement trail going through there for bicyclists and walkers, and there's a lot of walking trails through the woods also. So I see people out walking all the time.
Okay.
And some of the other parks, there's one that's near a golf course, has a golf course in it that I'm planning on hunting this year. One of them is several hundred acres, and there's walking trails going through that, but that's it. I mean, there's no other cement in that park.
Okay.
So it's basically just the woods with the trail going through it. But other ones have actual cement trails going through them, yeah.
Okay. But it does attract lots of people.
Yes.
Non-hunters are in these vicinities at the same time you are.
Right.
As you're trying to hunt a deer, they're going on their morning jog.
You bet.
Okay.
Yep.
So how do you prepare for that? Obviously, we covered the proficiency test, but as a hunter, I mean, that's just getting the rights to do that, or the privilege to do that, starts from the testing. But then what do you do? I mean, there's got to be a whole other rule book here that doesn't apply to the big woods. So what types of things do you start trying to figure out? I mean, this is a whole different ballgame.
It really is. And every, like the main area I hunt is called just a Polk County hunt. And it's not like the Des Moines Park and Rec hunt. I've done the Des Moines Park and Recreation Park hunt. I did another suburb called Pleasant Hill. I did their hunt. There's several other suburbs that have their own hunting regulations, and all of them are a little bit different. It's really kind of crazy.
Now, what do you mean by different regs? You mean that each park has a different rule book?
Well, every suburb has their own like special rules. Like say for instance, Pleasant Hill. I hunted there my first year, and they had several hunters in several different areas. You could sign up for an area, and they would assign you. You could tell them if you wanted to hunt during the week or weekends, and they would give you, like, you can hunt this date to this date on that area, and so will this person and this person. And then you're not hunting that area for another week or two. And then they just set out the schedule. And it seemed too time consuming to me. It was pretty complicated. Another urban area, suburb, I talked to a guy that hunted there, and he said that their first year you had to wear blaze orange. You couldn't hunt before 8 o'clock in the morning. You couldn't hunt after 3:30 in the afternoon. I mean, it's just the best times to hunt. You couldn't hunt. And
was there a reason for that, or was it just?
Well, he said that the person that was running it didn't like hunters. So she didn't think that they should even have a hunting thing in her town. So she kind of made it difficult for everybody. But and it did make it difficult because he said wearing blaze orange up in a tree, people would walk by on the trail and they'd see him automatically, and they'd come over and see what he was doing. Why is this guy in orange in this tree?
Right.
They don't know any different. They're not hunters.
It's kind of defeating the purpose, right?
Yes, it does. They don't do that anymore. But
get into that a little bit more detail on location. How do you get notified where your location you're going to hunt? Is there a lottery? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that's one reason I hunt Polk County, because their regulations, they don't restrict numbers of hunters in certain areas. They figure the hunters will work that out themselves. So I kind of like that. But you can sign up for certain parks. Like I signed up for the lake near my house and 2 other ones. So I have permission basically to hunt those 3. I can get permission to hunt other ones in Polk County, but I need to, get written acknowledgement that I can hunt there and things, so they know who's there. And they also issue a tag to put in your car window. So they see this blaze orange tag in your car window, and the officer or police officer or a ranger or whoever sees that, and they say, okay, there's a bow hunter out here. They should be here late. It's okay, or early. And they know it's a bow hunter. That's not somebody that's out there walking and maybe fell down and got hurt, on a trail or something. They know you're out there bow hunting.
Right.
So that's a good idea.
So when you're talking about when they assign you an area, like you're talking about an area,
right?
How big are these areas that you're getting assigned to? How many square miles?
Oh no, there's no square miles. The park I hunt, I don't know how many acres the total park is. I was going to look that up before I talked to you. I think it's 260 acres, I believe.
Okay.
As the whole park. The big one I hunt, that includes the lake. The big one I hunt's probably 350 acres.
Okay.
And the other one's probably about the same size, and it's kind of on the outside of town. That's the one by the golf course. Probably about the same size. The one that's inside town that I drove by today, it's probably less than 10 acres, but it's right in the middle of town.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so you're talking about some 10 acres, that's nothing. So you got to, do they put other hunters in there at the same time?
And that one is specifically just Des Moines Park and Rec. It's not Polk County controlled. So that guy puts a certain number of people in certain parks, so it's not overcrowded. There's not 20 people trying to hunt this 10-acre piece of ground.
Okay. And
he only has one hunter in there a year.
So just to give you perspective, 268 acres is less than half a square mile.
Right.
Less than a mile. So
yep.
These are tight quarters. So who designates how many people are going to be hunting in one spot at a time? Is it the landowner? Is it the city? Is it the?
Well, it just depends on the who you're talking about. Like the Des Moines Park and Rec, they dictate numbers of hunters. In Polk County, they say this 268 acre piece of ground, they can hunt in this area, in that area. They cordon off hunting areas, and they say as many people can go there as want to. So I've never seen more than 4 other people.
Okay.
Total, not at one time, but total. So because it is a small area and there's not very many good spots to put tree stands. We can talk a little bit about that if you want to.
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, so you don't. The first thing that kind of comes to mind, the first question is that so you're hunting these urban areas. You're preparing your tactics that way.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you're setting up tree stands, and there are lots of people around, and you have to figure out where these deer are coming and going from, and it sounds like, these are fairly heavily beaten paths, and not by deer. We're not talking about deer trails. We're talking about human trails.
Right.
And from experience, most of the hunters that I know wouldn't think to go hunting in city limits. Not something that usually goes hand in hand. Some smart hunters would, I would think, who feel that there's an opportunity, and certainly there's some big deer growing inside of urban areas. So your competition is probably fairly small, is my guess. And based off what you described, would you say that's the case?
Yeah. I have been out scouting before, and you find a nice trail, you find a nice ridge, you see a nice funnel, and you go there and you look up. This is a perfect tree. You look up and there's a tree stand. You're like, oh, okay. So you go a little further, find another awesome looking spot, and look up and there's a tree stand. So that does happen. One of the tricks to that is you cannot put out your tree stand until a week before the season starts.
Okay. And
so that day, the busier areas, people are out there first thing. They're out there crack of dawn, putting up their tree stand. So that's one of the keys to doing that. If you're hunting a busy area, is to, if you know your area you want to hunt, if you've had success there before, you want to get your tree stand out there early. Okay. And I've never had anybody. I had one guy set up what I thought was too close to me, so I just moved. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
But
so how do you scout an area for deer in a park? Tell me about that.
What I do is I just don't walk the trails. I just walk through the woods. And one of the tricks are, number one, you can't shoot towards a trail. So your tree stand can't be facing a trail, shooting towards a trail. Number two, you can't shoot any more than 25 yards. So your tree stand has to be 25 yards off any trail or any road.
Okay, gotcha.
You can't trim anything. There's no shooting lane trimming. So that's another big thing. You have to use an elevated stand, of course, because they want you shooting downward angles, so there's no safety issues.
Yep.
Then you have to find deer trails, places where deer are at, and combine all those things together to create a good hunting opportunity. And that can be tough.
So what do these deer trails look like in amongst the human trails? What are you looking for? Is it the same as hunting the big woods, or is it different?
Pretty much the same as hunting big woods.
Okay.
I look for, there's some serious deer trails, which are usually the doe trails. And then 10, 15, 20 yards away from there will be a smaller trail, which is usually the buck trail. And the thicker areas are usually better than the thinner areas, of course, because they still like cover. They know people, and I'll tell you what, that's where it gets tricky too, because they know people. There are people around them all the time, so they are experts at avoiding human beings. If they see you, or of course they smell people all the time, so the scent thing's not as big as you would think it'd be anywhere else, Right. If you're hanging out in the big woods where people aren't there ever until a certain time of the year, and all of a sudden there's all this human scent, and they all go scurrying for the, deep timber. Yeah. It's not that way here, but if they see you up in a tree, they're not coming by, or they'll skirt around you, 40 yards. They're experts at avoiding you.
Do you have a tactic that you use to hunt them particular deer in that scenario?
Yeah, I try to find trees that are... I like to hunt close to trails because usually I use a recurve. Last year I started with compound, but I've been hunting with recurves for 25 years, but recurves longbows. But so I like to get close to trails, but you can't get too close to a trail with those kind of deer that are looking around all the time. And I try to find trees that have some cover around them, which can be difficult also because you can't trim anything. But I do have a trick for that too. One of my tactics for hunting those kind of areas where it's thicker, you can't trim anything, so I save bowstrings, I save pieces of rope, I save shoelaces, whatever. Paracord's awesome. You just tie up as high as you can on whatever sapling you want out of your way and bow it down and tie it to another tree. So you're not cutting it, you're not harming it, but you're moving it out of the way.
Interesting.
And it works fantastic.
That's a great tip, and I may run in the same scenario there. I
was going to use I make myself a little grappling hook, because some of those, the higher you get, the easier they're bend over. And I'm about 6'3" and about 260, and I look pretty funny screwing up a little tiny sapling. and I've done it.
I feel you.
That's one way to get them to bend over. But if I could throw a little gapping thing up there and hook up high and then pull that thing down, that'd be the way to do it too.
Because then you're not violating rules by cutting. You're just moving and shifting your own lanes.
Right.
And you just put it back the way it was when you're done.
Right.
That's a great tip.
Make sure you cut your strings and get them off there. And if you get up in your tree stand and notice that you didn't move it quite enough or something else is in your way, you can just get down and adjust it. It works fantastic, I'm telling you. Works great.
I could see how the deer would not be as sensitive to the smell because they're around humans all the time.
Right.
But the sight thing, definitely, they'll move if they're getting too close. And they won't go there at all if they feel like they're getting too close. It's your job as the hunter to go find their corridors that they're traveling through the most and not disturb it when you're getting in there, because there can't be that many places where they can go, right? It's not like they can go and hide out in a large piece because there just aren't large pieces in parks.
Right.
But so you have to be tactful in how you get in there and not disturb the deer movements so as to inhibit your abilities when you hunt.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So tell me, is there a different move pattern with the urban deer that you're hunting? Do you notice that say you're hunting out in the country and you're hunting big timber and then you go in the urban, is there a different pattern that the deer normally would change up for the urban areas?
It might depend slightly on the amount of human traffic there is. In the summertime when there's lots of people using the park, barbecuing and walking the trails and walking their dogs, it would affect the deer movement a little bit. And in the fall when people slow down using the park, and it's not as comfortable out there for people to walk, I don't think they move any different. They move early and late mostly. They move out. Does usually first, and then the bucks will move out. But of course, during the urban hunt, we're focusing on adult does mostly. They do have incentive tags for bucks in some areas, and that's how I got my buck put on your website last year.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I got an incentive tag for a buck.
So let's say I'm going to throw a scenario at you here.
Okay.
Let's say mostly these parks, and I'm going to base this off of what I see here in Ohio. Like most of these parks from about 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., there's people usually doing like an hour, maybe a 2-hour walk. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious out there, with your experience in hunting the urban deer, do them deer tend to hold off on their movement if the traffic's still there early fall? Do they move a little bit later, early fall?
Not necessarily. Like I said, they're experts at the human movement thing.
Okay.
So they know when somebody's walking down a trail that they're probably not going to see. I'm a deer. Here goes a person down the trail. They're not going to see me. So as soon as they walk past, I don't hear them anymore or don't see them or whatever. I'm safe to move. That type of thing. It seems to me like that's the way it works.
Okay, so they're still on the same feeding movement pattern, early morning, late evening.
Right.
It's just they're a little more stealthy about it.
Right. Yeah, they can be stealthy too, for sure.
Gotcha. Okay.
There is an area I hunt a lot over here by the lake that there's a road that people drive down early and late just to see deer, and you don't see them all the time in this park. Some parks you drive through, you can drive through at 2:00 in the afternoon and see deer. There's so many deer. The park I hunt's not quite like that. I think we probably shoot out of that park maybe 10 deer a year. That's not a lot, but other parks they shoot 100. But So yeah, there is a road where people drive down just to see the deer, and so they know cars. They know cars aren't any concern to them unless they're out in the street. But yeah, other than that, just moving through the woods, yeah, they move just like any other deer.
Right, for sure.
Interesting. So Dan, tell us more about your setup. What other tools are you using in your bag of strategy points here? What are you using? What are you planning? How do you set up? Other than your tree stand, is there anything else that you put into your bag of tricks before you head into the woods? Early season, I would say a thermocell, because September 19th, the mosquitoes are still out. Right, definitely.
And they are out and hoarding droves of mosquitoes. So a thermocell and that permathon stuff you can spray on your clothes and your hat.
Yep.
That stuff works great too. I used that last year, and that was fantastic. So that for sure. I do use deer calls. I like deer calls a lot. I do use scent spray for my boots just to make sure, I'm not on a trail and there's maybe human scent somewhere where it's not usually there when I'm walking to my tree. I spray down my boots and stuff like that. That's about it. I don't use binoculars in the parks very much. I should probably, but that's not one thing I carry around because I wear glasses and it's just tough for me to use binoculars a lot.
Okay.
I would say a thermocell for sure.
Okay.
And deer calls. That's my main two things.
Let's get into the deer call thing a little bit more. How do they respond? Is it what type of calls are you using, first of all?
My favorite calls, the Hunter Specialties True Talker. That's by far my favorite deer call.
Okay. And what kind of calls are you making on
them? I do a lot of just doe bleats.
Okay.
And early season, some fawn bleats. Later on in the season, I'll use buck grunts because the does do like bucks during the rut, and so they'll come to a buck call. Actually, I've had it happen anyway, but mainly doe bleats just so they know that hey, there's deer out already. There's a deer over here, so it must be okay to move around. And I've actually had them come to the call also. So mainly just doe bleats, small doe grunts, that kind of thing.
Do you feel like that's one of your most useful tactics of all the things that you try?
I would say yeah.
Okay.
I would say yeah. Last year, I guess there was one time I used a buck grunt and didn't see a doe behind me, and it scared this small group of 3 does really bad, and they took off. So I didn't even take it out with me the next day. And I was like, okay, if that's the way we're going to be, and it was January. It was actually December 31st. When I did that, then the next day is when I shot my buck, and he was in rut. I mean, he was rutting and he was following a small doe. So maybe that's why those other does got scared by the buck grunt, because he was out searching for more does. Gotcha. And they didn't want to be bother by them probably.
All right.
It's you can use a doe bleat now to call in a doe. It's legal, right?
You bet.
It was supposed to be a joke. It was a joke, guys. Sorry.
You're darn right, it's legal.
Dusty will be here all week.
Sorry,
I
guys.
just flew in. Boy, are my arms tired.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the one question that's been I've been wanting to ask here.
Mm-hmm.
So you shoot a deer with a bow, and there's people walking down the trail. What happens?
Well, I haven't had anything bad happen yet. I've been pretty thankful for that. There's been nobody nearby when I've shot a deer.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. The deer I've shot mostly in the urban season has been when there's snow on the ground or when it's cold and Harley Bay's out. I haven't really talked to anybody that's ran into... Oh, yeah, that friend of mine that kind of got me going in this, he's been doing it for about 10 years. He hunts the park up north where the golf course is at. And he shot a deer, and it landed pretty close to this guy's camper, apparently. And the guy didn't appreciate it very much.
Okay.
Because he'd been there, and he'd been feeding the deer, and then this guy shoots a deer. And so that didn't go over very well.
Gotcha. So
But,
What did they do in that situation? How did they resolve that?
well, they had to call the ranger, and the ranger just comes and talks to the camper and says, he has permission to be here. He's passed all the tests. We need to get rid of some deer, and sorry this happened to you, but this is an urban hunt area, so that's just the way it is. And they always stress that if you have a confrontation with a non-hunter, a citizen that doesn't understand what's going on, to just walk away or call the ranger or something. And thank God I have not had that experience yet. I've never had anybody look at me in the tree, but I'm sure sometimes if you get somebody that's totally anti-hunting, it can be pretty hairy when you're up in a tree and can't get down and get away.
right.
So you just call the ranger and they'll come over and tell them that this is legal. They're here legally. We want them here to save your car from an accident. And but a lot of guys I talked to that have had people see them going out or coming back or in their tree, will stop them and say, "Hey, thank you for killing some deer because I ran into a deer last year with my car and it cost me $10,000 or whatever."
Right.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question here. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but do you think this is something that's a kickback from insurance companies for these park hunts in Iowa?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Iowa is the insurance capital of the world, I believe, and when you have populations of 150 deer per square mile, and we still have areas like that in Des Moines, that's a lot of deer, and you're going to hit deer with cars. And what started this whole thing was the insurance companies and the citizenry, said, "Hey, we got to do something because we're hitting way too many deer. They're destroying property. They're just wild vermin." And that's what started this whole urban hunt thing for Des Moines, was that kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely, I think insurance companies had a big thing to do with it.
Interesting.
That is interesting. So when you're dragging the deer out of the woods, or it's not really out of the woods, you're kind of just moving it onto the trail. Any interactions with anti-hunters or just people that don't hunt, dragging it down the trail? Is that the way you get them out, or you try to avoid that?
The way I've done it, personally, I have a deer cart, and I'll put them on the deer cart and then cover them with a tarp.
Yep.
And take them out that way. And the ranger where I hunt at, he really appreciated that, because he said, I don't need the phone calls. And of course, you don't put them on the hood of your car. And he's had that happen before. A guy driving through the park with a deer on the hood of his car.
Right.
Not smart. Not smart doings there. But if you put it in your truck, put it in your car, whatever you need to do, and tarp it, the buck I shot last year, it died fairly close to the road, so I just drug it up to the road, pulled my truck up, threw it on the carry-on back, covered with a tarp, and we took off.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you do take a couple little extra steps to make sure that you kind of blend into the background. Nobody really even realizes what's going on.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to be obvious at all. You want the non-hunters to not be put off by it. Because I'm sure if people want to put up a stink, that they could put up a stink and might put a stop to it in some areas.
Right. So it's almost like you're being as stealth, trying to avoid the human interaction, as you are trying to be as stealth hunting the deer that could potentially be harvested and then not upset the people that aren't there or that aren't hunting.
Right, exactly. At least I am for sure. I try to avoid human contact at all points out there when I'm out there hunting.
That makes sense.
Are you allowed to videotape your hunts inside the park areas, the urban areas?
Oh yeah, sure. You bet.
Okay. Now, I was just curious. Here in Ohio, you're not allowed to video or take pictures inside the park area.
Really? Huh.
Yeah. That just keeps social media and the public light out of the mix.
Oh, I suppose, yeah. The gentleman I mentioned earlier that he kind of started the whole urban hunt thing. He actually did videos, his own videos, and sold them DVDs years ago, and his son still does it. And I'm sure some of those are in-town hunts,
Gotcha.
Excellent. Well, Dan, I'd like to go on a hunt with you here and just see if we can walk through like the last 48 hours up to the kill and do a play-by-play on how you kind of approach the whole hunt and what happened, your most memorable deer hunt. And I'd like to make it a Des Moines, Iowa urban deer hunt, if that's cool.
You bet.
Cool. Dusty, you want to take the charge on this?
Yeah, absolutely. What year are we going back to?
Let's just go back to last fall.
Last fall. Okay, let's get in like 48 hours before the actual kill shot and start with tell us a little bit about the area so we can get familiar of what kind of woods are you in and tell us about your tree stand set up and go from there.
Okay. I was hunting over here by the lake by my house, and I'll go a little bit further than 48 hours. I hadn't been seeing deer moving in the area I'd seen them last year, and I had a tree stand up on a ridge, and I wasn't seeing the deer moving nearly like I saw last year. So I moved a tree stand down to the bottom by kind of a runoff creek area. It's not a creek all the time, but when it rains, it's full. So I moved my tree stand down there. And there was a real good trail going up through this real thick stuff. And my tree stand wasn't very high in the air, and the tree wasn't the best tree in the world, but it had a little cover. So I set that up there, and I made sure it was off the trail far enough, not facing the trail, all those other neat little rules you got to do. I had to cut a big bramble vine going up that tree so I could I had to pull it down. It was dead. So I just pulled it down and to get my tree steps up there. And of course, you can't use screw-in tree steps, so you have to use strap-on ladders or whatever you need to use. So I got it all set up about 48 hours before, and then I hunted it the next day and didn't see anything. I thought, well, shoot, I know there's deer down here because there's a good trail. When are they moving? So I set up a trail camera down there and actually hunted the next day. And that's the day I was there, and I was like, there's no deer. Where are all these deer at? And that's when I blew my buck grunt. I probably blew a little too aggressively because those 3 does were standing behind me, and they took off like a shot. But I was so happy because I was seeing deer. I can't tell you. It had been weeks since I'd even seen a deer out in this park.
Was those deer within range when they took off?
Yes, they were. I hate to say, yes, they were. They were definitely within 15 yards.
Right.
That's probably why they took off when I blew that too loud. But so I was like, okay, there are deer here. And in a park like that, they won't leave an area and be gone forever if they spook because it's a park. They're used to people, they're used to noise, they're used to whatever. And then they won't just vacate and never come back. So I knew there was deer there. So I was like, okay. So I went back the next day, and next morning was New Year's Day. It was cold. No snow, but it was cold. And first thing in the morning, here comes 7 does down the hill right towards me. And I hadn't seen a deer in this woods for 2 weeks, like I said. And I was getting kind of shaky because I was pretty excited. I actually had deer, and they're going to come to me. And if they crossed a human trail and kept coming on the trail where I was at, I would have a 5-yard shot. And sure enough, I wasn't going to wait for the biggest one to come down. Well, the first mature doe that came in front of me, I was going to shoot her. So the first mature doe came down, stopped, perfect. I drew back, let it loose, went right over her back. I was like, no way. I missed this deer 5 yards. and I just could not believe my first shot I even had last year. And I was just sick. I thought, okay, settle down. Those does, they didn't even run off very far because the bow I was shooting was pretty quiet and they didn't really know what happened. I thought I was going to be able to call them back, a couple of them. Sometimes, I don't know if you guys ever blow at deer. When they blow at you and they come closer to you.
Yep.
Sometimes you can get them close enough to shoot them actually again.
No kidding.
But they decided they weren't going to play around with me, so they walked back the way they came. But from past experience, I know that sometimes they'll come back within an hour. They'll come back down the same trail and check things out a little closer next time. But they'll come back down on the same trail.
Interesting.
So I thought, I'm just going to sit here. I'm seeing deer. Even though I blew the shot of the year, I'm just going to sit here and wait. So I did. And here comes, about 35 minutes later, here comes some does down that same trail. Not 7 of them, there was 3. And they came down, but they didn't come down quite the way the other ones did. They cut through the woods and through some really thick stuff. And in the meantime, I had seen some bucks walking down, over towards the road, and saw some other does over in some thick area. So I've seen a lot of deer.
What time of day is this, Dan?
It was in the morning.
Okay.
I would say I have it written down. My first shot opportunity was probably between 7 and 7:30.
Okay.
So by the time those other does came down, it was probably 8:30. And in between that time, like I said, I'd seen some deer actually on the road, walking down the road. In between me and the road, there's some really thick, really gnarly stuff, real brambly. I don't know how they walk through that stuff. I really don't. But saw some deer in there. So these 3 does came down. They walked to my left, and I was watching them, and they kind of kept going. And I saw another doe over there, just by herself, and she was a small doe. And I was like, okay, well, there's still deer moving around. It's getting to be 9 o'clock, and still a lot of deer movement. So I just stood there, and like I said, I had an incentive buck tag in my pocket still, because there's some real bruisers walking across through the park, as you can imagine. And I'd seen a lot of bucks early, but I didn't want to shoot just anything. So I still had that tag in my pocket also. And I noticed some other movement over there. I saw antlers. I was like, oh my. And he's a 140 class 8-pointer. So he's been around a few years. And I don't know how many, 3.5-year-old maybe, I don't know. But he's not dumb and not moving very much like a buck following a doe in heat. They don't move very much. And I would lose him in the brush. And then I'd see him tip his head, and okay, he's still there. And he followed that doe, and they walked off. And I thought I'd never see him again. And then about a half an hour later, here come they back. Come back the same way they went. And I was like, oh, please come over here. One of you guys need to come over here. And the first thing I thought about you, Dusty, when I was going to talk to you guys, because the first thing I saw him was his brow tines, these big, long brow tines.
Nice.
And I thought, boy, I want to see what Dusty calls this buck. But I have my own name, I think. But anyway, I was like, he's a nice deer. I want to shoot this deer if I can. And I grunted at him, and he'd look over my way like, I got my girlfriend here. I'm not coming near you. I suggest you not come near me. So he was glued to her, and it's January 1st, and I'm thinking he is rutting, and his tarsal glands are black, and he is stinking.
Right.
And it's January 1st, but this doe he was following was really small. She was a yearling for sure, and I kind of felt, she's pretty small, and he was pretty big. So I was like, you're way out of her league, buddy. But anyway, so she came down the trail across the human trail, right towards me. I thought, awesome, he's going to follow her, and it's going to be perfect. And he kind of ran to cut her off a little bit, and she just kind of looked at him like, whatever, like the does do. What are you going to do? I'm going to eat. I'm going to go bed down, whatever. So here he comes across the trail. And as soon as he came across the human trail, and I had a good spot where I could shoot him, I pulled back. Well, before that, I guess the doe had seen me up in the tree, and she stared at me, and she stared at me, and stared at me. But then she kept coming, and she was pretty young, and came right by my tree, and I got this beautiful picture on my camera, my trail camera. And actually, the close picture, where basically it's just her head, you can see the buck in the background up in the corner looking at her, just barely. So that's kind of a cool picture. But so anyway, she came right, she was close to my tree. She walked by about 6 feet from my tree probably. And I thought, here he comes. But the problem is he was walking straight towards me. So I'm pulled back. I have my pin on him, and he's coming. And then he stops, and we have a stare down, and he is looking, and I am pulled back. I'm rock steady, but I'm thinking, this is not a good shot angle, and you need to turn a little bit. And he was kind of really in that spot where it was, do I want to keep coming, or is this not the right situation for me? So you can kind of tell what was going on. His ears were kind of swiveling around, and then both ears kind of laid back, and I was like, uh-oh, he's going to take off. And he took a step to turn around to go back the direction he went. I let her fly and just drilled him. And I always forget how fast those big bucks are. They are so fast. Man, when he took off, he just lightning fast. And I heard him crashing through the timber, and all of a sudden it got quiet, and then crash, 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 crash. I heard him fall down. And I was like, yeah, he expired within 6 seconds, I bet. And the doe, she was still standing behind me. She didn't know what happened. But I was too excited about that buck to even think about her. So I was standing in my tree stand, trying not to fall out, shaking so bad, and couldn't believe I got this shot opportunity. And the season was going to close in 9 days.
Right.
And I finally got my buck, and I knew he was down. And I was going to sit there for the required half an hour. The required half an hour you have to stand there and try not to fall out. And about 5 minutes into it, here comes a big coyote down the trail. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. This coyote's already smelling my dead deer? There's no way. He's not going to get my deer. So I got my stuff together and let my bow down and climbed down and followed the trail right to him. He went about maybe 40 yards, and he was just all piled up right there. So it's the biggest buck I've shot with a bow. So I was pretty stoked.
It's a great story, Dan.
It is a great story.
Yeah, he's pretty nice.
That's awesome.
One of the requirements for the urban hunt is when you get a deer down, you need to contact the contact person, the ranger, whoever you need to call, and so they can verify it. You need to call it into the state. Your state tag has a number on it. You call into the state and report it. Call your ranger, and then he comes out, or he can meet you somewhere, or whatever, however it works. My ranger came out and met me, and I actually brought my son with me to help track it. I wanted him to follow the blood trail, and it was definitely a blood trail that a blind person can follow for sure.
Gotcha.
And he about walked right into it, but looking down at the blood, and there it is.
That's awesome.
So the ranger actually took a lot of pictures of it too. So I expected them to show up in a Iowa Outdoors magazine or something maybe, but I hadn't seen anything yet. But so yeah, he stood there where we gutted it out and got the tag on it, and away we went.
That's cool, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yep.
It was a good time.
So can an out-of-stater play in these parks too?
And no, you have to be a citizen. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no out-of-state hunters for the parks.
Interesting. That's sounds like that if you're in the state and you are a citizen of that state where this is occurring, you probably want to take advantage of this.
A lot of guys do. I just read today that there was 196 proficiency tests given last year. 196 hunters took 202 proficiency tests. So either some of them failed and took it again, or some guys get proficient with more than one different kind of bow. Yep. You can be proficient with a compound, with a recurve, with a self bow, crossbow if it's legal for you. But so yeah, 196 hunters in the state. I mean the in-town hunt last year.
So is this the only type of hunting you do, Dan? Is inside of city limits?
Well, I've only been doing this. This is my third year. I started doing this because my private property, I had some awesome private property. I got a really good story for that too, if you want to hear one. But I had some awesome private property, but I lost that. She decided she wanted a local kid to come hunt. I had some public ground, but most of it's a minimum half-hour, 45-minute drive to get to it. This is, I can leave work at 3:30 in the afternoon, be in my stand by 4, So it's quick, it's easy. Me and my family eat a lot of deer. I process all my own deer, and we eat a lot of deer. So some guys that hunt, they might shoot a lot of deer, but they donate to the Hush program, the program where they can donate deer to feed the hungry.
Right.
So.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, that's awesome.
But I kind of like to process my own meat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's really cool. I think that's a fascinating whole story. Love that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I enjoy it. It gives me more time in the tree, which I love. If I don't have a buck tag in my hand, my first year, I just got to watch the bucks chase the does around and interact and stuff and not get nervous about it. I knew I couldn't shoot one.
Yeah. And
I saw some bruisers last year, and that was just a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun just to watch.
Yeah. So it seems like this is just a tale, as I think a lot of us have gone through, is how can I spend more time in the woods and not have to travel too far so I can be in my stand quickly? Basically, that's the reason.
That's my story, yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with that. Absolutely. So, Dan, tell me if you had like one book that you would recommend, what would that book be?
Oh, let's see here. I know I've heard you talk to other people about their favorite book. I would say probably one of the traditional bow hunter books.
Yep.
On traditional bow hunting, the different equipment and that kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a series of 3 of them. I would say one of those, probably number 1, because I'm at heart, I'm a traditional bow hunter. So
gotcha.
I'd say that's probably got the most influence on me.
Yep. Okay. And if there's one item that absolutely drives you insane if you leave it in the truck, what's that one item?
I would have to say my deer call. Me and my true talker. If I get my stand, I don't have my true talker on me. I don't feel complete.
Feel a little naked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've
Gotcha.
used that thing a lot.
Gotcha. All right. And give us your number one urban deer hunting tip of all time.
Oh. I would say don't be afraid of the thick areas. Don't be afraid to go in where it's thick, and then use my tip about saving your short pieces of string or paracord or shoelaces or whatever, rope, and tying those branches back and tying that brush back, so you can shoot.
Yeah.
I'd say that'd be my number one tip. Get in there where it's thick, and don't be afraid of the thick, and tie that stuff back.
Nice. Love it. Dusty, you got any other questions for Dan?
How do you taste, Dan?
They taste fantastic. They taste great.
Do they end up foraging on different browse than what you would like in the country?
I wouldn't say so.
No.
Probably a lot of the same forbs, same grasses and stuff, and then they make their way out to fields that are around. There's fields fairly close. I would say a half a mile probably, or within a mile of where I hunt. So they can go out to a cornfield if it's picked and eat out there, or soybeans, but they do a lot of browsing in the woods too. So that thick area is a good place for the browsing also, of course.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, Dan, this has been an absolute pleasure. I learned a lot tonight. I learned a lot about urban deer hunting that I didn't even know existed. And thanks for kind of painting that picture for us and filling us in on how that's done.
You bet. It's been a real pleasure. I'm glad I've heard you guys' podcast a lot, and it's a real pleasure to talk to you guys.
I'm glad you were able to be a guest.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us on the Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast.
You bet.
Dude, that was amazing.
It was. It really was. Like, it goes to show you that it's not how far back in or how deep you get. You can kill a buck in the right scenario pretty much anywhere, Jay.
If you know your territory and you know where your deer roam, you don't have to go very far. In fact, I can't tell you how many stories I've heard about people who went 30 yards off the road and shot one of the biggest bucks of their life because they hang out there too. It's not like they don't hang out around roads. They do.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about that.
Right.
But urban hunting, man, it's an interesting subject to me because it's a completely different style of hunting.
Yes. Different style hunting, and there are big bucks that grow in these areas because there's not that much pressure when it comes right down to it. When you're a hunter, you don't think about hunting the urban settings, but I think there's so many opportunities there.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, and it's one of them things where if you can't get in the program like Dan does,
yeah,
you can probably find a residential area that's in the urban area that you can hunt on with the proper permission.
You're with your bow. That's always a better approach, I would think, than saying, hey, I'm going to come in here and hunt with a gun. Say, I'm a bow hunter. It seems for some reason it gets handed a nod somehow.
Yeah, I agree to that. A firearm brings up a whole different level of awareness to a homeowner.
Right. Saying I'm a bow hunter.
Especially in a residential area.
Right. There's something very classic and classy about being a bow hunter.
Yeah, it's really interesting how that works.
Yeah. It's a mindset. I don't think gun hunters are any different than bow hunters at the end of the day, but to the person that doesn't hunt, it seems to be something more unique, more traditional, and somehow
a safety factor. Really comes up. They feel a little safer when you say archery equipment.
Absolutely. Yep.
They know that if you're at their back by their woods, that you're not going to be able to shoot through their windows.
Yeah, and they like
makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Yep. Well, thanks to Dan Spencer again for kind of give us the ins and outs of urban deer hunting in Des Moines, and it probably applies to a lot of other urban settings across the country. So, Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week this week?
Oh, man, we got a good one this week, Jay.
We got a good one. All right, lay it on me.
I want to say something here that brings me back to my home roots.
Okay.
There's nothing easy about farming. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Okay, it's hard work. There's times that it's not the most comfortable situation, and
I'll give you that.
In your hours in somewhere that you're not comfortable. Let me tell you, whitetail hunt the same exact way in a sense. Because just because you don't have that most comfortable tree or the most perfect tree for your setup, or it's not the tree that you dreamed of, if it's the area that you feel is a potential kill zone for a nice mature whitetail, and there's only one or two tree options there, you pick the best one, the safest one, and you make it happen. Don't be stingy on where you hang your stands at, people. Right. Opportunity is there. You often walk by it by not having that proper scenario that you dream of. Right. So if you see the evidence of a mature whitetail in this particular area, and it's not the best area to hang a tree stand, but you think, oh man, that tree would work if I had to go there. Well, don't shoulda, coulda, woulda. Go there and make it happen. That's my tip of the week.
All right. I like it, man. Excellent, dude. So where can we find you, Dusty, when you're not here hanging out with me on the microphone?
Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors, Facebook.com/Chubby Gobbler. You can also reach out to me on Instagram @ChasingAntler. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not right here on the mic?
You can find me on Facebook. It's BigBuckRegistry.com/Facebook. You can find us on Twitter, Twitter.com/BigBuckRegistry. Give us a call at 724-613-2825 if you'd like to talk to me or to Dusty, or leave us a voicemail and let us know what you think about this show. You can always find us on iTunes. And if you're an Apple user, please do this. Go to your podcast program or your app, type in Big Buck Registry, and download our app, or if you're in the App Store, or listen to the show on the podcast app and do a search for the Big Buck Registry and type in your review of this show. Give us a 5-star review if you love the show. You can always send in a picture of your big buck to BigBuckRegistry.com/mybuck, and there will be all the instructions right there. If you'd like to download our app to listen to this podcast on an Apple device, it's BigBuckRegistry.com/app. If you would like to donate to this show, you can go to BigBuckRegistry.com/donate if you're a supporter, or if you'd like to pledge your support, we also have a pledge page, BigBuckRegistry.com/pledge. So I think those are all the places we're hanging out, Dusty.
Big Buck, Big Buck, Big Buck, everywhere. Big Buck. Hey, also, we're doing Name Your Buck.
Still running the $59.99 Big Buck Deer Naming Special by Dusty Phillips.
Absolutely. Send in a picture and we'll name your buck. We'll give you a buzz. Tell you the name that I come up with.
Yes, we will. Oh, man. I'm Jay Scott.
Now I'm Dusty Phillips.
This is the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast. See you next week.
Can't wait.